it's going to be hard for any of us to recover from what they've done to us, you know.
Yeah, well, I know it's hit people in different ways and like different impact levels. And the idea of doing a fundraiser was because, like, specifically people like in your position were impacted so heavily, and like nobody's done anything in the last year. Like, it's been a year of
Yeah,
watching the lawyers spend like approaching $200 million of effectively our money with no
yeah,
results yet.
yeah,
Um, Celsius used a lot of prominent folks to like promote themselves, and there was often like a paid relationship
oh
with
yeah, it
uh
for sure was.
yeah, so like a lot of influencers getting paid, I think like 15 grand to do interviews, and they would also get referral fees.
Oh gosh, I think most of the influencers I listened to mentioned Celsius. That's why I heard the word so often that I looked into it myself and thought, wow, if all these people think it's great and they're having, you know, this many billions assets under management, all these other people have done the due diligence, it must be really good. And, you know, once I'd listened to that Real Vision interview, I was just sold. That was such a compelling story, and the way he told it, he seemed like a ordinary man in the street. He was a rags to riches story, and it just seemed so very plausible. And so then you believed everything else he said, that he wasn't taking any risks, it was safer than a bank, that he was doing what banks should be doing for their customers, sharing the profits and not charging people fees to even have an account and all of that. So it was a very compelling business model. And I thought, goodness, I wish somebody had done this years ago. This is how banking should be. You know, if we're going to contribute our assets, we should get some return. And this is a fantastic model. And if only it had worked, I thought I was set for life. You know, I had decided I was going to have to sell my house to retire because it was really my only asset. And I'd been a stay-at-home mum for many years. And I knew I couldn't afford it in retirement. I had way too many overheads, monthly overheads. And so I'd already sold it, and was trying to decide where I'd buy my beach house, where I could afford my downsized beach house. And because I was still working and earning good money, there was no pressing reason to buy the beach house. So that's why I transferred my USDC, which was for the beach house, onto Celsius, because that was earning the highest interest. And so I don't actually have a beach house or a home now. I'm just living with my son in one bedroom now, in a rental that I used to own. So I've really come from thinking I had the most glorious future and that everything was set. I was going to be getting my $1,000 a week yield. That was more than a few of the last jobs I'd had. I was thinking this is going to be fantastic, and I'm not going to touch the principal. And I'll be able to see that grow to give to my sons when I pass on, the nest egg, and then I've got plenty to live on. And then all of that was nixed, all gone away.
Yeah,
And
well, like the fact that they were telling customers that they're earning so much that they're passing on 80% of revenue, like that was the
yeah,
big hook. And like it was this kind of feedback loop where every Monday you would get rewards, and be like, oh, that's part of what they're earning. And then
yeah,
they were also using Cell Token as more evidence of their success. But it turned out that they took $500 million of funds collected from customers to pump the token up. So it's like this feedback loop where the things you would look to judge the business were indicating positive signals, but they had their thumb on the scale.
yeah, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it
Um,
was very, very deceptive. And you know, it seemed totally plausible that they would keep the 20%, that would be what they would need to run the business. So you just assumed that they were running everything efficiently because that was what was always stated. You know, we have military grade security, we're on top of everything, nobody's been harmed in any of these hacks that have happened in crypto, we're not taking any risks, and I'm the biggest holder of sell, I'm not selling anything, everything stacked on top of itself to make you believe that It was a well-run, efficient company that was prospering and growing. And instead, we discovered that it's just a cesspool of deceit and dishonesty and fraudulent behavior. And even after this all comes to light, he's never once apologized to anybody. You know, you'd think if somebody had done that much wrong, that the first thing they would do is do everything in their power to make as many people right and whole as they could, not perpetuate all the scams and hold on to all the money. And there's rumors that he's even trying to manipulate the sell token back to 81 cents. So no remorse whatsoever. Basically a sociopath.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of describing him. I mean, there's also, so I guess to set the table for, like, you actually met him in Miami, according to your declaration. And
yeah,
the year prior in 2021, the Examiner found that Celsius had lost $811 million. So like they had these huge losses, which they never disclosed. They're saying they're profitable to us. And then you meet him in Miami. And can you maybe talk us through how that meeting went?
Okay, so because he had my entire life savings, and by that point I'd spent all the salary I'd earned for that year on buying a $48,000 Bitcoin in December, because people were saying it's going to go to 100,000 by the end of the year. And so I thought, oh, that'd be a nice little earner if it doubles. So I'd got this $48,000 Bitcoin. So basically he had everything. He had my life savings, which was my retirement fund, and my salary for an entire year. And I thought, I need to look this man in the eye and make sure that he realizes how much he's holding of my life and my future, because I see him every week and in the AMA. He's there in my cabin. He's like there in your living room. So you feel like you know him very well. And he's saying all this stuff that you're hearing constantly, but he doesn't know you. You're not on his radar. So I wanted to meet him personally and look him in the eye and tell him, you have my everything. Is it all safe? Is it really as you say? I just want to look him in the eye, because the eye really gives things away if you can look someone in the eye and tell them that. So, I mean, it was very complicated because the boat I was on was in a very remote area. I had to take 3 days off work just to go to Miami because it was so difficult to get there. And I, sure enough, went to that meetup and he and Chrissy arrived, and I got in the line of people that were all struck by him, and I shook his hand and I told him all this stuff. And he said, oh, absolutely, it's safe. You don't need to worry. You know, looked me in the eye and said that. That's why I know he's a sociopath, because he had no compunction. And at that point, that was the 8th of April. And so he must have known that on the 14th, they were going to introduce custody, that they had the regulators breathing down their necks, that all of these changes were happening. He knew how much money he'd lost trying to buy back the Bitcoin in January and February, going against the market. And he just carried on with the soothing words and making me feel that everything was fine. And I just can't get over that. You know, if it had been anonymous and I'd never met him in person, it might have been a different thing. But to actually stand before him and have him lie to me like that, that's really distressing to me.
Yeah. And especially in view of the fact that he took his own personal wealth on the platform off of the platform. So he was withdrawing the month afterward.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
These leading 5 or 6 employees were selling $40 million worth of sell token through the over-the-counter desk, which was selling sell back on to customers. So it's effectively, I mean, is it any better than theft when you pump this token up to mislead consumers into buying it, and then they're just running for the exits? And they received, like, employees received $85.5 million in sell bonuses because they pumped the token price up. So when it hit $1.50, $3, and $5, it triggered these tens of $millions of bonuses to employees. Like, it's outrageous.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at one point, it was the fastest growing altcoin out there. I remember Plan B saying this, and so everybody was stoked about it. They thought, you know, nothing's growing this much. It's really pumping. So everybody was very happy, not realizing why it was growing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because there's even a few people to this day that still think it's organic growth. I guess they haven't read the Examiner report because
Yeah.
like the company specifically instructed its traders to break up the buy orders into small batches so it looked like organic growth.
Right. Yeah. So that's such deliberate deception,
Yeah.
deliberately making it look organic like that. So yeah, it's just very tragic. And it's very tragic that there's been no reform to bankruptcy laws, and that this petition date pricing is going to be inflicted on us all, because that's nearly a 50% haircut for people like me that got in 2021 on what we put on the platform. And then it's going to get the other haircut. So it's going to be just minuscule. I'm going to recover from what I deposited.
Yeah. I guess the good news is, like, to some degree, it's just a tool for them to cosmetically say that we got back more, because effectively it seems like Series B is going to be ejected. They're going to get their 25 million, which the vast majority, I think it's 96% is going to the lawyers. Like, what? It's so stupid. Like, why did they waste our time for $1 million? Like, the Series B gets $1 million and Milbank gets 24 million. It's like, how is this possible?
Oh,
Just so
yeah.
outrageous. Like, they're
And they've
just
been disruptive from the beginning. They
yeah.
have.
And they're also a reason, like, they had access to better documents, like financial statements.
Yeah.
There were Series B members who had access to the risk committee meetings. They had a board seat. They had much better access than run-of-the-mill customers like us.
Yeah.
And like, they didn't raise the alarm. And then they cost us another 25 million on the back end. So
Yeah.
pretty disappointing.
But I think they weren't going to go away. They were going to cost us maybe more than that in litigation, because it was scheduled to go all the way out till September. They weren't going to give up that bone. So maybe that was the lesser of all the evils, giving them the 25 million.
Yeah, I suppose there's always that argument. It's just it's painful. But then I guess if they are gone, the petition date pricing doesn't necessarily change too much, because we're effectively going to get whatever's left. It's just the number sounds higher because, like, they're using that. So the real value will be much lower considering the prices have increased. Although it's interesting because I think in your case, it might actually be beneficial, because stable coins holders will benefit if other crypto assets appreciate from petition date pricing, because like the stable coin bags kind of get filled up a bit more. So it helps a little bit in that respect. I know you also have Bitcoin and Ethereum exposure as well, but
yeah, I just divided my nest egg into 2 pots, and I'd put half of it into Bitcoin and Ethereum back in early 2021, and I'd kept the rest in my Bank of America. And then I thought, why am I doing that? When I was listening to Mashinsky, why am I doing that? They're paying me 0.01%. I could just put it into USDC and get 10% on it. So that's what I went and did. But I don't know if the pot will get any bigger, because isn't the recovery a flat 36 point something percent of everything? So the USDC will only get 36% of each dollar.
yeah, although just the mechanics of it will be, if the prices rise, like some of that will flow into stable coins holders, whereas effectively the in-kind of like Bitcoin and Ethereum will decrease slightly, just to like make up the difference. Because stable coins like are valued at $1 on July 13th or today, whereas like you kind of get proportionally less if your assets are appreciating, because it goes to like everybody equally. So it's kind of like a weird quirk. But like the only people that benefit really are if your holdings have decreased in value or stayed the same, then you benefit because you're getting what the prices were back then.
Well, anybody that bought anything below petition date prices is going to be okay. You know, people that bought $1,000 Bitcoin or a $15,000 Bitcoin, they're going to get it valued at that 19,800, even though they didn't pay that for it. So they're actually going to be okay.
Well,
But
they're
people
going
like
to face tax consequences, so some of them are in tough situations. I think a lot of those people are in the loans camp. So like they borrowed against their Bitcoin because they were convinced, like, I don't want to sell it, so let me just borrow against it. And now they're effectively, it's as if they sold on July 13th, the bottom of the market in 2021 or 2022 rather.
Yeah.
So if effectively it acts like we all sold our holdings on that date, which is like the whole, like, completely not the reason we're going to use Celsius as a company. Like, it's supposed to be you're holding on to your assets, not giving them over to this shady company.
And I just have never agreed with the dollarization. You know, I was reading through the disclosure today, and so people in custody will get in kind back with those haircuts that have been assigned to them, but we won't. Ours will all be dollarized, and then the haircut dollarized amount will purchase at the current market value of that date to be determined right before plan confirmation. So we're just going to, you know, suffer triple losses here.
Yeah, it's
especially
the losses are going to be pretty steep. Because the estimates in the disclosure statement were like 36.4% of the petition date pricing. So that I think translates into like 24 or 25% in kind, roughly. That probably depends on the portfolio, but yeah, it's not something that anyone's happy about. And I guess the fact that, like, we're probably still quite some time away from the payout. Like, who knows if that'll be even this year? It might be next year.
Yeah, they omitted to put the date. They just had a big dot in place of where the date was supposed to be. But it did say 2023, so that's encouraging.
They're optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. I think I could tell you a bit about the idea of the fundraiser. I had basically the idea of wanting to do something, and then the thought was it probably has more impact. Like, I don't know how successful we'll be in terms of attracting people to raise money, but I thought it would make sense to try to pick one person, at least at first, and then try to hit like a $15,000 mark. If we do that, we can pick somebody else who's in a similar situation and kind of see how many we can do, because it feels like that amount of money is significant enough to have an impact. Whereas if it's like a lot of people, when you just raise a little bit, like if everybody gets $100, it's like not moving the needle. And then also, so it's like a way of, because I think your story is really compelling in terms of the impact it's had on your life, and the fact that, like, you were lied to, like, directly to your face about this company. And it's had such a negative impact in terms of like your quality of life and just the stress of having gone through this. So like, hopefully we'll be able to raise at least some amount of money. Like, I don't know what the expectations are, but it's also like a platform to maybe ping some of the influencers who have basically like pretended like they had no role in this at all. It's like,
but actually they led us into it.
Yeah. Oh, Celsius, that sounds terrible. Well, let's moving on to the market news. So like, I figure we can probably try getting people to kind of tweet about it. So I thought I wanted an idea of something that could kind of help raise attention. And then in New York here, they have this Citibike program. And I have a membership, and there's like this concept of like a bike rebalancing program. So they call it Bike Angels, where one of the troubles is that there's certain stations will have either too many bikes or not enough bikes. So they encourage riders to move them. Like, if a station has too many bikes, you get like a point to move it to a station that doesn't have enough. So it's a way that they don't have to hire people. They can just like incentivize folks to move it around, and then they give you points for doing it. So I thought it would be fun to try doing something around that program, where I'm going to try getting 1776 points in the first hopefully 3 days of July for the 4th of July holiday.
Right, 1776. There we go. Seems
Yeah.
like a good number, eh?
So it'll be like, I'll probably be biking for many hours for the first few days of July.
Right.
So hopefully it
So
could
you're
be
actually
something.
going to bike yourself?
Yeah, I'm gonna bike myself. So
Are you a biker then? Or is this going to be a new experience for you?
so I mean, I've used the program quite a bit, but it's gonna be far more biking than I've been doing lately. But I've been trying to get a little bit ready for it, so I'm not gonna get
Right.
totally destroyed.
Yeah,
So
get the gel saddle, otherwise your butt will pay. Those two bones. Ooh.
well, like you have to use so it's like these bike share bikes. So they all have the same like they have different models, I guess, but they're this similar seat. So it's not gonna be a special cushy
Oh, but you can buy a cover that's all gel filled that you just put over their seat.
oh,
and
interesting. Yeah.
help the ride if you're going to be doing hours and hours of it.
Yeah. I guess the thing will be like there'll be a lot of like start and stop because you have to go between stations. So I'll probably be like, it'll be a mix of like walking, maybe jogging and biking for a lot of hours. So I'm like going through supplies. I've got like battery chargers. I'm gonna get sunscreen, water,
Yeah.
hopefully like a sandwich, and then maybe try to encourage folks to kind of live tweet it. They have like a little leaderboard thing, so you can see the point total on their website. There's like people that are totally obsessed with this thing. So like some people do it like competitively. There's somebody who has like, let's even find this website. I'll share it. And I think the title of the fundraiser could be Ride for Rebecca. It's like the working title.
Wow. So am I going to be the chief beneficiary then?
Yeah. So
Wow, I'm so honored. You
yeah.
picked me.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. Like you have like this really compelling story and you're like, you've taken like a pretty visible role as well. So I feel like it would be a great person to build this around. And it's also nice that like we've gotten to know each other through this process, although it's not been very fun for either of us, I'm sure, especially for you. And then I guess if we hit 15,000, we'll have to think about who's next up on deck. But
Yeah.
I was thinking of doing like probably just crypto wallets to start with. So since like based on your holdings, it seems like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano might be good. Like, and then I guess if I've been like hesitant to do like cash because or like bank or PayPal or stuff like that because I don't know the tax consequences. Like I was thinking of founding a 503c, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like I want to see if it like we actually raise money or not. Because
Yeah.
if it like takes off, then it's like, okay, great, maybe it makes sense to do this now. But I've also like hesitant to use my address in registering it. All the crazies out there. Yeah.
You know that we are being stalked by hackers who will swoop in as soon as we get our payout. I mean, we've already been doxxed so much. I mean, I'm seriously concerned about what address I will give them for my payout, because obviously I'm not going to be using Coinbase or a hot wallet. And then there's been all this coming out about Ledger not being as secure as everybody thought. You know, I've never actually owned a Ledger, but I was thinking I might have to buy one, but I don't know whether I should now.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's still, I actually have one here. It's still nice. I mean, I think they got a lot of flack, but I think a lot of it's also like engagement farming, where people like probably rightly push back on this idea of having the key be fragmented, but then they're like pitchforks where it's like hasn't even been implemented yet. So I think it's an idea that like I wouldn't want to use that feature, but it's still like a nice device in terms of like, if there's a lot of like Bitcoin only people, and it probably makes sense not to use it if you're that. But I've enjoyed it for like interacting with other ecosystems. So.
Right. Okay. So that you'd still recommend getting one of those?
I mean, I like it. It's like a nice interface. It makes it easy to use. And
yeah, but definitely don't put your address out there.
no, yeah. Well, that's the thing. If I registered using my home address, that would not be great, because it's also just, I've had an incident where a social media influencer was threatening to come to my house. So.
Oh my gosh.
Well, there was an incident with BitBoy, because I guess when he got looped into the Cell advocacy group, an anti-clawback group, he was like threatening the Whiten case lawyers and the UCC members, which, I mean, I don't think they've done a great job, but they shouldn't be threatened either. So like, we had like a confrontation at like a Spaces call, and then like we exchanged DMs, and he was threatening, because I guess he was in New York for some event, and he got my address, I think, from some of the squeezers who had, I guess, looked it up somehow.
Right.
And then like he was threatening to come to my house. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, you're like, no, I don't want you coming to my house with a camera crew. It's like, no, thank you.
Yeah, he's a bit of a hothead, but I think his heart is in the right place.
Yeah,
But
hopefully.
he gets triggered by things and goes crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Luckily he's.
I have to say, I did watch him every day, because he when you're new to crypto, he's giving a lot of information, and I mean, he's not as well informed as I think he hopes to be, because he was discovering things as we were discovering them, and caught out by the same way we all were.
I've noticed he's had a habit of kind of regurgitating information. So like he'll get something from a source and then like create a video about it. So like, even in like real time, like for a little while I was researching his show during the whole kerfuffle, and he had like quoted Jace Damerson in one of his Celsius bits. I mean, it's like, oh, thanks, cryptosexual. It's like, okay, this is not a person you want to be quoting from. But.
No. Oh gosh. Yeah. So, well, he didn't at least come and ransack your home. He never actually showed up.
No, he never showed up. But I was making clear, like, look, you're not welcome just to show up at my house. Like, it's kind of weird that you would have my address in the first place. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it's also different if somebody's like trying to make a social media spectacle. Like, it's not going to be like, if I have a problem with somebody, I'm willing to do a phone call. But like showing up at my house, that like you're escalating this into a place where it shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, well, I mean, you're very well informed, and you can analyze all the data and give us all the succinct version of what all this data actually means. So that's been incredibly helpful, and everybody looks forward to anything that you put out there, because it's all top quality stuff. And I used to love it when you were filing all the time.
Oh yeah.
You've eased back on that.
Yeah, well, I feel like it was more for us than the lawyers. They kind of ignore most of. I'm sure they will love reading the 30 letters that were just submitted to the document.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I was glad that they were all repetitive, because I was driving for 7 hours, and then I wake up and see all this. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so behindhand here. And then it's like, oh, they're all repeating each other.
Yeah, it was basically a form letter. I mean, the fact they think this is going to move the needle is like laughable. Like when we had a group filing, we all submitted our signature to something that I think Manny organized. I'm like, that's a more respectable way to indicate you have widespread support, not to flood the docket with 30 individual signatures.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but they managed to not get that. That was when it was the earned decision, the crucial earned decision. And they managed to not upload something, so it couldn't be brought in to evidence at the hearing. And so basically the judge didn't listen to anything on the other side of the story of the earn coin.
I mean,
and that
it really
cost us so much.
Yeah, well, it comes down really to the UCC because that was part of their strategy. They didn't want to argue that case on our behalf, but I think we agree that that may not have been the best strategy because it has consequences for us. Like, it's the reason that they need to sell the like non-Bitcoin Ethereum assets now. Like, if they were ours, they wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
They could have also returned sell token to people if it was still title still belonged to them. Like, they would have had to do that by custody people.
Yeah, I think that was the worst decision of the whole bankruptcy, basically, was, and it wasn't even a ruling, it was an opinion.
Yeah.
So it could be overturned, it could be challenged, but I guess at this stage nobody's going to do that.
Do you have any maybe final words to wrap up?
Well, I know that I'm one of many people who put their whole retirement on there, who's of retirement age. And so my heart just goes out to all those people. I remember in the beginning, Simon saying that people were contacting him with the most heartbreaking stories. And, you know, you just hear a few of them on the spaces, and people that you get to know, you realize are in the same boat. And I just hope, for the sake of those people, that this new co will prosper, and that some of the half of the recovery that's going to be the equity could actually do what they think it's going to do and make us whole eventually down the road. But for some people, it's going to be too late. There's not enough years left for the recovery to come to them, and they're going to be living in very tight financial circumstances. And so to me, that's just a tragic situation for all of those people. And the only good side is that we all got to meet each other and share our stories and join together in these spaces. And it's unbelievable that so many people can come together to share and to feel the support of everybody else who's suffering from this. So I'm very glad I found those spaces and I found everybody, because otherwise I would have just been some kind of lone crazy person just weeping all the time. And
it took some,
when you meet people in these spaces and you hear their stories and you think, oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, it actually took some time to form those connections, because the official channels were still overrun by the like reality distortion field of scammers in chief. Like, so it kind of took a while before everybody realized that Celsius was like a huge fraud. And then that's when the connections could really start to get made properly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining. And I'm hoping we'll be able to get at least some activity for this fundraiser. So
yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. I think it went pretty well. So I'll see you can cut it together. Rebecca, well, have a great rest of your trip too, and good luck driving.
Thank you. Okay then, Cam. Take care.
You too.
Happy
Bye-bye.
cycling. Get the gel.
Thank you.